Welcome to the Blah 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 Career Cast, focused on sharing the career stories of real people. I'm Jennifer Chenoweth, a wife, mom, Midwesterner, and career coach. This week's guest is Jordan McGowan. In this episode, we explore Jordan's career, how he started in business, and we also talk about what's led him to more purpose-driven work. I'm excited for you to listen to his story. So Jordan, excited to have you here today to talk about your story. Where's the best place for us to start?
Thank you for having me. I would start based on being a very earnest, I think, intelligent enough kid who had the influence of great parent figures, came from a mixed family. One dad was absolutely set against ever being broke on the farm again. So it was business. That was my stepdad. My natural father is a professor of art education, which means when I was with him, which was significant, spent a lot of time dabbling in experiencing the arts of the world. It was anything but business. And my mother was always very good to me, is still very good to me. And mom was a traditional mom. But I really think the starting point for me, when I look back at my career, involved navigating my perception and my desire to address and meet the expectations of two solid father figures. One, the really ambitious business person who really, he's 88 now. And I think his driving force is still not being broke on the farm again, and he's still going.
Yeah.
He impressed upon me that the biggest force of social goodness in the world can be business. It depends on how you run it, but there isn't anything a government or any other entity could do that can impact people's lives more than a business. And I grew up in Reagan era South Dakota in the 80s. And I believe that, and I carry that with me. I learned from my natural father that there's a big world of knowledge and experience and humanity that really transcends business. So I had these two fantastic people who I both wanted to be happy, in a sense that set me up for success. But as I got to my mid-career, I think I observed in myself that my perception of those expectations were a little overweighted. And I was fortunate to continue to live somewhat of a life in the arts. I studied liberal arts. I became a pretty good writer. I think my literary thinking skills have probably declined, but I invested heavily in that as a college student.
Yeah.
And then I set about wanting to prove, and this was my MO, I'm going to get a liberal arts degree, and I'm going to show you I can do it in the corporate world at a high level. So I got exactly what I wanted, but I really will tell you that was in response to my perception of other people's expectations, namely my stepdad and my dad.
Yeah. Yeah. You've worked at some really significant corporations, Jordan, in your career. I've got your LinkedIn up here naturally, but you started your career at IBM, a fantastic organization, worked as a client executive, inside sales representative, and then went to work at a technology company, which has since changed names a million times, like all tech companies do. And then spent a significant period of time at U.S. Bank. That's a pretty fantastic start to one's career. Many people would aspire to have a start that looks like that. What was that like for you?
Like many young people, certainly those I was surrounded with, and now those I observe, I was maybe a little bit of a shallow thinker when I was a guy in my 20s, but I really wanted to live on my own, have a good time at work. That involved having a good time with the people I worked with, finding my way to affiliate with a big brand that I thought has always appealed to me. And like everyone else, I think people will tell you, I got a little bit lucky. And as I look back at every job I've had at this point, going back to IBM, it was, I found my way there because of the people I knew and friends, lifetime friends. So
Mm.
on one hand, I think, oh my gosh, what have I ever done to really leverage my network? And then I look back and I realize, oh my gosh, it's my network that got me involved with everything that's been important to me work-wise. And that started with IBM. I was delighted. I started as a supplemental employee. It was a big time of transition at IBM. There was no guarantee that I would ever have a full-time job or benefits. Earned my way into that, moved around a bit, kept knocking on the door of my managers with a high amount of confidence and probably not so much self-awareness, thinking that just throw me at it, I could probably do the job. Got into a client executive role for major utility companies in the Midwest. And frankly, quickly realized that, okay, I did this and some business education would probably help. It was a lot for someone like me who had a English degree with a focus on literary criticism to really navigate the ins and outs of corporate
Mm.
relationship management and sales. But it felt great. I felt like I had met one of my objectives. I wanted to study that way. I wanted to be that type of worker, and I wanted to work for a big name company, and my
Mm.
relationships got me there.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what? You left IBM?
Then I left IBM. I went to grad school for 2 years because I realized maybe I should learn something about business. First thing I realized was it's so much more fun to be an undergrad than it is to be a grad student. But I
Right.
also, in the course of that, started to perhaps get a bit more serious about what I wanted to do other than have a good job. Met a woman who's now my wife for about 25 years.
Mm.
Took that 2 year grad school program as a full-time student. And then it's probably where I bumped in my first sense of thinking, man, people see me as a tech guy, got these IBM credentials, wanted to get married, wanted to start a family. The idea of reinventing myself was not even worth mentioning because I just, as that point, I really felt like I had to stay on a course that I had already started. I wanted to be in something that was transparent, focused on execution, and a local big company. And that led me to U.S. Bank.
Yeah. How'd you get your foot in the door there?
There is a, there was, I was a student at St. Thomas. I was a full-time student at St. Thomas in the early days. I think the early days of their full-time MBA program. I heard from two people at once about a really unusual opportunity at U.S. Bank that it was the same opportunity. It really resonated with me. I was so interested in this. I picked up the phone and just tried to call someone in HR and actually got a call back from
Oh,
someone in Portland at that time. And then because of that, I must have mentioned to some other people, I'm interested in this because it's just tech wasn't transparent. It wasn't transparent to me then. I don't know. It just wasn't what I wanted to do for the next 10 years. So then I heard about this usual opportunity to be a prospect manager at US Bank.
hmm.
This was a pet project for a very senior leader, a vice chair. It involved working with our commercial banking markets, in my case, everywhere but the Twin Cities,
Okay.
to build new business pipelines. And I
Mm.
became really proficient at it.
Mm.
And that led to me winning some really nice awards. I went on the trips, and then I was in an enterprise leadership role for sales effectiveness that I really enjoyed.
Mm.
But I found my way to banking on purpose.
Got to work for a really incredible leader while you were there.
Yes, thank you for reminding me. I knew it then, but it really, in retrospect, it really had an impact on the decisions I needed to make for myself moving on. Because what was unusual for me was I was in banking, but I wasn't a banker. Really
Mm.
didn't want to be a banker. I wanted to be in banking. There's a lot of people like this, people in IT, people in finance, some marketing people. But I was there for the Richard Davis years, who was chairman and CEO of US Bank. This was a period of 2005 to 2018. What Richard modeled in terms of how he spoke to me individually when I had the chance to be with him one-on-one, when he spoke to small groups and large groups. He impressed upon me that a business can be high performing, can be purpose driven, and can be human centered.
Mm,
That was how he led. Now, banking's tough. After he had retired and after the organization changed, I was fortunate to receive a package to make a transition. And there were a few years where I thought I knew what I wanted to do, and I set about to do it. I was fortunate to get three separate offers from two different consulting firms to do sales leadership consulting,
mhm,
and it didn't resonate with me.
mm,
Very grateful for the opportunities I had, but something in me had shifted.
mm,
And once I took the time to really think about what do I care about? What do I know? What do I know about myself now? I realized a couple of things. Number one, I can't be governed anymore by my perception of other people's expectations. And
yeah.
also, it's only in retrospect that I realized what Richard modeled in his leadership. And I was spoiled and I had to duplicate that. And I'll repeat, high performance, human centered, and purpose driven.
Mm-hmm.
That spoiled me, if you will, or it created a high standard. And that's
Yeah.
what I realized I was seeking.
Yeah. I think you and I have had conversations about there's 5 things that make people happy in their career. Maybe we haven't. We've had so many conversations. I can't remember what we've talked about and what we haven't. But 5 things that make people happy inside of their career. First is security, money, benefits, job continuity, that kind of thing. The second is community. I like the people I work with, have faith in my leadership team. Third is growth and learning. My job affords me the ability to grow and learn in ways that I value. Fifth is self-esteem. My job makes me feel good about me. I'm proud of the work I do, proud of the contributions I make. My work makes a good use of my skills and abilities. And the fifth is purpose. My work contributes to something greater than myself that
Mm.
I feel is valuable. And I think when I listen to you tell your story, at different phases in our life, certainly those things, the favor we place on those things shifts, right? Heck, when I first graduated college, I was like, man, I need to make money. Not only do I not have money, but I have debt. And I don't like owing anyone money. And
Yeah.
so I need to make money. That was single-heartedly my number one most important thing that I pursued. And I think listening to your story, you pursue those things because it's what you've always done until you were forced to, or that you mindfully take a step back. What was it for you that prompted you to say, wait a second, this isn't working for me? Like, how did you figure that out? Because I think a lot of people would just keep going along with it and they're like, they would say, oh, I'm in a valley. This'll figure itself out. But I know your story
Hmm.
enough to know that that wasn't the case. What was going on with you? How did you handle that misalignment that you were feeling?
Part of it had to do with going with what I thought was right initially, right? I had to use my best judgment. And I had to pay attention to how I was feeling. And then
Mm,
I had to discern, was I getting good data from these feelings? I think this has been said in a lot of ways, but I agree with everything you said. I'm not ashamed to make money. I'm not ashamed to say I wanted to be corporate and I went corporate. Like that was really good for me. I know it's not for everyone. And look, I'm a child of the 70s. I'm a guy. It's only in the last 10 years that I've really detected that we're all getting much more in touch with ourselves. I even used to joke not too long ago, maybe in my mid 30s, that perhaps the unexamined life is worth living. Okay. So I say that in jest, but the fact is, I had to realize I had some feelings, I had some emotional experiences, and I had to deduce fact from fiction. And once I did that, I just realized, once I was honest with myself and with people and good counselors and advisors like you, I was able to put some words around the feelings and make some different decisions. I realized my priorities had changed in the same manner you had just described. The people who I was trying to show off to really didn't matter anymore. I'd arrived, I built a family, great family relationships. Those things didn't matter, and they cast a long shadow. So I was able to discern that was a source to change priorities, but chasing other ones was really made me ill at ease, made me
Yeah.
very ill at ease. And then I realized, like, you know, I had to have really high standards. I was picky, and I'd earned the right to be picky.
Yeah.
And during the pandemic, I love telling this story. I had a lot of time to think because I was very close to landing at one of these consulting firms, and the pandemic happened, and everything was on pause. And I went and I got the high school job that I never had in high school that I really needed to have. I worked part-time at Costco for a season and then worked there long enough to earn benefits as a regular part-time employee until the consulting firms were showing up again.
Mm.
I had to tell you, that gave me a sense of how it feels to really enjoy your work. And I know it's Costco. I love it. I went there because I love it as a member.
Yeah.
One of the only clubs I'm a member of. Thank you. But I took from that experience this feeling of feeling a little bit unburdened,
Mm.
in a sense, working in protest of all these perceptions of other people's expectations that I carried with me and realizing no one really cares. I'm having a good time and this is right for the moment. And then that sense of inner goodness because of how much I enjoyed myself and being a part of something big and taking care of members. I know it sounds corny. I didn't find that in my consulting world. I found that it's pretty hard to take care of clients if you care about other things. Then I had to
Mm.
sort through that. I'm like, what is the disconnect? And all I could refer to was, man, I was really happy at U.S. Bank, but my priorities changed. I was really happy part-time for 9 months at Costco during the
Mm.
pandemic, but I'm not doing that for the rest of my life. But I felt good about who I worked with. I felt good about who I worked for,
Mm.
and I felt good about the work I did. So
Mm.
I thought, whatever I do, I want to get that good Costco feeling. I got to care as much about what I'm doing next as I did there because I really cared. It was really a lot of fun. I've got as great of friends there as I do at US Bank. That taught me a lot. That was the high
Yeah.
school job that I never had in high school.
Yeah. Where did it land you, Jordan?
A former colleague from one of the consulting firms heard me, saw me on LinkedIn. I think I might have said something about, I love enterprise sales effectiveness. I can't do it for hire. I got to do it for a team. I need to be in a leadership role, and I need to do something that matters that's somewhat local because at US Bank, I mentioned my work, my office was in the Twin Cities, but my work was everywhere else in places I'm never going to move to because we're rooted here. Network led me to Genesys Works, Twin Cities, which is a social enterprise that creates a lot of value in the community and for our corporate partners because of what we do to create year-long paid internships for under-accessed, highly talented students. It was a perfect marriage of purpose, business as a force for good,
Mm.
and a journey of higher performance. And my network led me there. It was a former colleague from one of the consulting firms. And I think it's because I got my words right. And he said, I know exactly who you should talk to, just like that.
And how, tell me how it's going.
I'm really pleased with it. I love our mission. I love the people I work with. I went from being one of the youngest guys at a consulting firm now to one of the oldest guys surrounded by people who don't get any sitcom references that I relate. But it is a much more rich experience for me because of the people I work with and because of the people we serve. Here's what I know. I thrived in the corporate world. It came easily to me. It was easy for me to get there. There are really ambitious, talented people in high school who the corporate world cannot access, nor can they
Mm.
access the corporate world. So
Mm.
I get fired up about the students we serve, because the students become professionals. We watch them on that journey. We're building economic mobility on a merit basis for the
Mm,
students that opt in and that continue with us on a merit basis. Our partners evaluate them. Partners like Target, partners like Optum, partners like SPS Commerce. I'm talking companies with standing.
hmm.
The young professionals thrive. They create economic mobility. We've got a better community.
Yeah.
I will tell you this, it was my interviews at Genesys Works is the first time I said what I believe I've been coached to say in many interviews, and that's this. I need to be a part of this. I can make a big difference. I need you to hire me now. It's the only time I've had an interview where I said that. And look, I have a theory. Work, at some point, there's a standard. This is the Jordan standard. Sometimes work is a matter of deciding what type of challenges are worth having. What type of headaches do you want to have?
Mm,
We are a high performing organization. I love the journey to higher performance where I can contribute as a member of the leadership team to building the organization that will make a sustained impact in this community, on the students we serve, and on our corporate partners. I think it's going great. It's not without its challenges, but every headache I have, if I can call it that, absolutely worth having. And I love solving problems with the people I work with. Love it.
I'm also going to do some bragging for you, Jordan,
Uh-oh.
because not only did Genesys Works, was it a mission-driven organization that you could really wrap yourself around, but you had a tremendous amount of skills that organization could benefit from in the way about how you think about partnerships, how you think about collaboration, and how you can tell a story to an organization about why this matters and why this is a win. One of the things I love about Genesys Works, and frankly, it's because of our friendship that I know about this organization, is it's a win. That how fun is that? Like how fun is it to work for an organization that's truly a win? I look at it that way. You work with organizations to identify what are gaps in your talent matrix. You create skill-based learning programs that you take high school kids and teach them these skills so that
Mhm.
they can contribute and add value within corporations that in turn open their eyes to corporate work that they might not have already known because of their circumstances, upbringing. Sometimes you just can't see what you can't see. So you show them an opportunity that they might not already be aware of, and you give them a skill that allows them to add value, right? To me, there's magic in that, listen, I'm a kid who grew up with junior achievement, right? What I loved about junior achievement, I don't know if you're familiar with that program,
No.
we created micro companies as high school kids, and we had to build a product, and we had people who worked with us, and we had to produce something, and we had to sell something, and we had a board of directors, and we had to pay people, and we had to call people who didn't show up for work and do all those things that you didn't get to do in high school because you just sat in a classroom all day.
Yeah.
And I look at Genesys Works and I'm like, you're creating something very similar to that. You're giving people real jobs, allowing them to add real value and creating economic growth for organizations too. Like we'll train somebody who can start to really add value for your organization. What a fun value proposition to get to put the Jordan brand behind.
It's a lot of fun, and I've learned about myself. I don't have to build the thing that I dive into. I love to contribute and to make it better. And I'll tell you what, it's really fun to get a win and to know that we got a win because of the people we serve. After
Yeah.
being an incentive-based sales for so long, I was an odd bird. I thought I'm doing it because I think I'm really helping people, but I'll take the incentive. I love winning for the people we serve with
Mm,
the people I work with. There's nothing better. I come home weekly and tell my wife, I'm having so much fun at work again.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just weekly, I will say that. And that's because of the opportunity. That's just because it's the right fit at the right time. I'm just really happy.
Jordan, what do you hope someone takes away from the path that you've walked? Who do you hope hears this story and says, "Oh man, I'm gonna do something different because I heard this story."
I would hope that someone could find a way to take the pause that refreshes, whether it's facilitated by a coach, but to really test, if you have the opportunity to reconsider what your future path looks like. And if you're feeling like, man, I don't want to do what I just did. For example, banking was great, but I didn't want to work that hard to do the same thing for another bank. I did that and it was great. And all the awards are in the garage now. Find a way to check whose expectations you're meeting
Mm,
and take some time to consider how, if your priorities have changed since you started in the world of work, how they've changed. And perhaps, in a sense, some people like me might be spending a little too long trying to prove something that doesn't need to be proven anymore.
mm,
You were a coach for me that really, you got me out of my head rapidly in a coherent way. I
mm.
and when I got those words right, my network heard it, pointed me to this opportunity. Had to do with you facilitating for me an understanding of how my priorities changed and an awareness of what had been maybe governing me for many years. And that was a change priority too. It also caused me to reflect on who is the leadership role model that raised the standard for me, and to really hold yourself and what you do next to a very high standard that meets your criteria, my criteria,
Yeah.
not what you think other people expect of you. I
Yeah.
hope that's coherent.
There was an intention that you brought to that moment of this, I want to do something that really matters. There was a component of legacy that was really important to you. I want to help build something that outlives my contributions, that I can look at and say, ah, I was part of that thing. And I get to be a part of that thing. And there was something about that idea that was so satisfying for you too, that it was like, yeah, all five components are important. Security, financial security is super important. Community is super important, but it was re-examining sort of the emphasis that you were putting on each of those five components that make someone happy inside of their career. And there was a huge part of your career that I would say was purpose driven. Another part was self-esteem driven of I have all this knowledge and I would love to use it to build something that I feel really good about. And I want to work with really awesome people and I want to feel like I'm growing and learning. But
Mm.
it was re-examining all of the emphasis on those things, right? So some things, security might have been overemphasized previously. And it was
Mm.
recalibrating that to say, wait a second, I can make $1 million a year. But if that means I come home at the end of the day and I'm tired and I'm crushed and I feel like I sold my soul, that equation doesn't make sense for me. And I feel like that's what you calibrated on was that all five things are important in different degrees than they were at other parts of my life.
The stark difference in priorities is obvious to me now. And I will say there is a challenge with timing, right? It's been a 6-year journey since I left the corporate world. A lot has changed, but I feel like in my bones and my spider sense, I realize, my gosh, you you don't have to do the same thing you always did because you were fortunate to address your priorities during that time. The whole world is different now, but there is appears to be a willingness and an openness to people who can convey their purpose-driven approach to their work,
Mm.
to bring business acumen into the social enterprise world because of persistent and real concerns about sustainability. Our organization, we about 85% of our budget comes from an earned revenue dollar. That means we're creating value.
Yeah.
Now, there's a fundraising component. My point is to anyone who's considering a move to something other than the for-profit world is it can be a really rich working experience. And I think people like me are more welcome now than they were, what would I say, 13 or 14 years ago? That's what I'm
Yeah.
feeling.
I'm so happy that you found an organization that honors your values for community, it feels like it honors your purpose, feels like it honors your self-esteem, that you can give back in a way that feels good to you, feels like you're growing and learning, feels like you're surrounded by people who challenge you and who appreciate you. And it just feels like you're checking so many boxes of components that make you happy. And I hope that someone takes away from your story that if you're not happy, there's hope. There's a lot of hope.
And what's confusing can be is you can find yourself feeling unhappy doing what you thought the next best move was because of old things, because of old priorities that cast a long shadow. As a guy and as someone who performed beyond his own expectations, it was hard to realize that the future looked different than the past. And that just took the right people to talk to, getting the words, and having the courage to find something that suits today's priorities. And in fact, the hard part was trying to understand that they were different and what was different about them. I had to put words around it. And
Yeah,
once I accomplished that, it frankly felt easy.
you did the hard work, Jordan. If you're listening and feeling like your priorities have shifted, you're not alone. Maybe what used to motivate you doesn't anymore. Maybe you've outgrown a role, a title, or even an entire career path. Jordan's story is proof that it's okay to change, and it's wise to pause, reflect, and realign. You don't have to keep proving what you've already done. You get to decide what matters now and build from there.